Alright guys, so if everyone is ready, let's get started. First of all, thank you so much for joining. My name is Faizan, and today's topic is going to be migrating, modernizing, and scaling with Google Cloud. Alright? So are you good on food and drinks? Yeah? Alright, well, if you want anything, feel free. We'll take it as casual as possible. I like to have an engaging and dialogue conversation, not something that's very scripted. As my computer and technology actually cooperates. Alright, brief introduction about me. I've been in technology for 10 years. I do a lot of plethora of other things. I'm an avid cricket player, so if any of you guys play cricket, big cricket fanatic. Played in the league for 8 years, fast bowler, left-handed, so that gives me a little bit of an advantage. One of the coolest things I did this year is I competed in my first physique show, which was a great experience for me. And I also published a book. So enough about me. I'm going to take a little bit of time for you guys to kind of give us a brief introduction about yourself and tell us what you guys want to do and what's the mission that you guys want to achieve. So go ahead and just pick up. Go ahead from Ellen if you want to introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm Alan Lawrence. I work just down the street at Microservices. It's an oil and gas company, but I'm in the IT department there.
Okay.
Surya Nair. I work at Overhead Door Corporation, manage the infrastructure.
Okay.
Hi, Shmuel. I'm with the AT&T and YouTube IoT and manufacturing, smart manufacturing.
Did you say AT&T?
Yeah.
Okay, I spent 4 years there. So, sir, go ahead.
I'm Tony Chamber, working with Netflix Mall
Okay.
on the applications side.
Okay.
I'd like to know more about the Google Cloud space.
Sure. And I also have my colleague with me if you want to introduce yourself.
Ray Stovall, field rep for Dido, and I'll probably be the one reaching out to you after this to see if we can kind of get anything moving. If you guys have any projects that you're looking to jump into.
All right. So now that we have introduced ourselves, let's talk about a little bit about what Dido is, what Dido does, and where we stand in the strategic things, right? So we really focus on 3 main components. One is obviously cloud consulting, right? We want to minimize your complexity for your journey. So everybody sips this mantra of cloud, but very few people understand the complexities, the nuances, and the codependencies. And this is where we have our value proposition. We step in and make your life easier. The second thing that we really do is big data and machine learning analytics. We know that today, 95% of data is unstructured, right? What are you doing with that data? Where is it being stored at? How are you taking something out of it and providing lawful insight that's useful for your enterprise and your organizations? And this is where Dido can come in and achieve that type of efficiency and optimization for your corporations. Cloud solutions, I love the cloud. A little background beforehand, I came from a networking Cisco. I was a Cisco Palo Alto guy, got my CCNA, CCNP, fell in love with cybersecurity, got my Splunk and Palo Alto certs. So networking and security were 2 things that I really enjoyed doing because that was the focal point of a lot of enterprises, right? But when the cloud came in, the paradigm of technology really shifted. And I'll draw a little bit on why and how it shifted and how the business strategic objectives allowed us to be in the cloud today with an explosion of this technology. So any questions on what we do? Is there a specific component area that you guys would need help in or that you guys are doing right now that you feel like there's a gap in the industry that most other organizations don't provide? Like cloud, infrastructure, cybersecurity, BCDRP, machine learning, predictive analytics, anything else?
I guess it talks about because when you start from end to end, right?
Right.
So that's what include collecting the data, digestion, analytics, AI, machine learning, visualization, security counting, of course. So when you say cloud solution,
So that's a good question. So we have G Suite and GCP. So it's an overall end-to-end solution, right? So you have an office productivity, right? Whether it's Office 365 or G Suite. Then you have Google Maps, which by the way, Microsoft and Amazon do not, right?
Yeah.
And then what we have from a Google standpoint, the leverage that we have is an ecosystem, right? So let's say you get a Chrome hardbook, right? So your hardware is Google Chrome. Your Titan key is Google certified. Now your productivity is G Suite, right? And if you're a G Suite customer, then it's extremely seamless and frictionless for us to embed you in our usage model where you can have Google Cloud Platform. So you're getting an ecosystem from an old home from A to Z. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's different from cloud solutions because let's say that you still want to have an on-prem type of expertise, right? You want an on-prem, you want GCP, and maybe you want to go to another cloud provider. This is where we can come in and give you that granularity. And right now, there's only two solid technologies that are really drawing that environment. Obviously, one being Kubernetes, right? So today, if you want to deploy a web application on the cloud, what are you using? What is your central control management? Just a question for you. Are you doing anything in that area?
I'm more on the solution architect, and I think we're looking into, so that's where I'm here, is going to stand better the different components for features.
Okay, yeah, so as I say, modernize, migrate, and scaling, most of our conversation is on infrastructure, but I would love to talk about data analytics, right? Because now, the challenge that most organizations have is the complexity of codependency, right? If I'm gonna take my router, switch, and firewall out of an on-prem, and if I have a Dell server running some sort of an application there, how does that do a lift and shift on GCP, right? These are the questions that you guys should be asking. These are the challenges that most organizations face in today's environment. All right, so why Dino? All right, so we go on our 4 E's, which is excite, enable, expand, and embed. All right, let me repeat that again. Excite, enable, expand, and embed. We at Dino really believe in 2 things: client organization value proposition and empowering our clients. We are there to teach you not only how to fish, but be a guiding hand for your support as well. All right, so we also have a professional services organization where we not only provide a value proposition for that, but we also are there for support. Okay? So a little just quick caveats, we have 1,400 clients, we have defined scopes, we have worked with that organization and deployed internal chatbot, which is one of our awesome products. It's also on the marketing promotion outside. We have transformation labs, we have data engineering and applications team, and we're working on a lot of solutions around cyber resiliency and business continuity and disaster recovery as well. All right, any questions on what we do? All right, so obviously there are a lot of challenges in information technology, right? It's a white elephant to address, but it's a necessary white elephant to address, right? And these are the 4 basic ones. But usually, administrative overhead is probably the most common one. Do you call a server guy at 2 a.m. when your stuff is down, right? What is your identity and access management looking like at that time? What is your security looking like? Are your accessless rules granular or centralized? Are they rule-based? Are they role-based? When you go to the cloud, how are your people, process, and technology converting from your on-prem model to your cloud model, right? These are engaging conversations to have. These are necessary conversations to have, all right? Applications and data. Before, the whole mantra of cloud was, I'm just gonna do my infrastructure, right? I'm gonna take my compute, I'm gonna take my media, storage, and security. If I have a Cisco ASA5520 running today, I'm just gonna run a software-defined network on my Google Cloud Platform, AWS, or Azure. But that's not the shift today. The shift is the problem of data. So let me give you a little retrospective. I was only 10 years old when Motorola Razr came out with their flip phones. Who remembers that? All right?
What was that again?
The Motorola Razr phone?
Yeah.
The flip phone, right?
Yeah.
I was only 10 years old age, but I loved it, right? It was like the coolest thing. And back in that day, if you had to text someone, you had to wait until 9 a.m. for free, right? So let me tell you the paradigm shift of technology. We went from voice being the main component, where AT&T was making good money on that, right? To websites, web development, where front-end and back-end developers, HTML, everyone wanted a website, right? Every mom, Tom, and Dick wanted to have a website. So we went from that to now an application-centric, right? Everything is an app-based. Back in the day, if you wanted to order pizza, you would call Pizza Hut in 60139, because I'm from Chicago, that's my area code. Call the person out, do your pizza. Today, if I want to order a pizza, what do I do? I launch an app, I put my setting locations up, it does everything for me on the back end, right? So do you see how the paradigm of technology has shifted from voice to web to applications to endless connectivity, which is cloud and IoT, right? The paradigm of cloud and the dramatic explosion of data allowed us to be on the cloud today. Because the surplus of data is so much, and the demand for having data consumption is so much, we have these type of issues. All right. What are other issues that you think are prevalent in organizations today that are not discussed as heavily as you would like?
Security, sure.
Well, yeah. So security obviously is the white, the big elephant. Let's see. What about like cost, right? Before, IT is a cost center. Now, the C-level executive challenge is, how do I make IT a cost center to a revenue pipeline, right? Like, if you were able to fix that problem, man, you'll be big, right? So those are the things that we try to engage our conversations in and our customers at what we can provide at Django. All right, so some of the big brand names we work with: San Francisco 49ers. I know you guys are a Cowboys workshop. 7-Eleven, Whole Foods, just some of the customers that we work with. All right, so today's agenda can be flexible, but basically I wanted to focus on 3 main components, or 4 more components. Infrastructure, which we discussed, Kubernetes and microservices, and how do we migrate and lift and shift. We can also talk about machine learning and artificial intelligence as well. And then security is going to play a role in all of those aspects. So security is going to be a facet that's included in that. And then Athos, which is a product of Google proprietary. And I'll tell you why it's a leading pioneer technological shift and why there's nothing else in the industry right now. Okay. This is what I call a cloud foundation. So if you go back 10, 20 years ago, we used to do something in Cisco called the core access distribution. Anyone remember that word? In networking, core access distribution. So they took this same model and they kind of emulated it on the components of cloud, right? So your app layer sits at the top, okay? Then you have your technological stack, which is compute, storage, analytics, ML, and containers, right? But your basic foundation is still network. Your basic foundation is still infrastructure, which is your identity and access management, your security, your networking, and your compute and storage, right? Before compute and storage, all these things are very hard to achieve. If your bottom foundation is not appropriate or put it properly, then obviously your app, your machine learning analytics, and everything else will suffer. Okay? All right. So these are, again, the 4 main core components of the SaaS platform. You guys probably already know networking. So let's say that in today's world, if you're running a Palo Alto or you're running a Cisco, how do you emulate that, or how do you mimic that on the cloud? What is the technology that you guys can utilize that will allow you to do that?
Cloud versions of
Sure. Right. So what the answer I was really looking for was software-defined networking, right? SDN is in control overlay plane, right? It's a virtual overlay layer on top of your physical foundation. So when I teach this to students, I also give an example. Configuring a Cisco ASA5520 can be difficult. Configuring a firewall on a cloud computing is extremely simple if you know the basic foundations, right? Drag and drop 2-3 rules, and you're basically done. And with Google Cloud Platform, the networking security rules is really easy. You can either use it on Cloud Shell, which is a command line, or you can just do a drag and drop, which is what most cloud GUIs or GUIs are doing already. All right? Security. On-prem security models are very traditional and monolithic. New gen security models go on something called zero trust parameter defense, which means that it operates in 2 models: context and content. Your content is the data that you're trying to protect, right? So if Faison.Sadat is trying to access a web server that has the salaries of all its employees, they're not going to be able to do that because I don't have the privilege to. Context is dependent on the parameters that you're trying to do, right? So let's say that you're a 9-to-5 shop, and after 5 p.m., you should be able to access payroll. Zero trust parameter defense takes content, context, and adds another complexity to it, which is AI-based type of security. And that type of security is groundbreaking. Because now, if you can actually clear all of this, try to lock yourself out of your Google Mail. Sometimes it will give you 2 attempts, sometimes it will give you 5 attempts. But there's an AI intelligence machine learning inference model behind it. And it will pick that up, and then it will lock you out on the first try, because it understands the game you're trying to play. Right? So the advent of AI has really pioneered and changed the game when it comes to security.
And I guess it's based on what device you're trying to access Google from, or
Yep.
where in the world you are. 'Cause if I'm traveling and I try to log in a country I've never been to before,
Absolutely.
I only get one chance.
So it's kind of like, let's see if you're from China, right? Like, all right. So another thing is it's geo-context. It does geo-context IPing, which is like really cool stuff. Google is able. So an interesting facet, and I don't want to talk a lot about networking because networking is one of my big fascinations. When a packet hits a Google network, what do you think it's handled by? This is a way open-ended question, but I just wanted to know if you guys have some sort of understanding.
Go to the firewall first.
Right. But Google does not have a router or a firewall or a system. It goes to a supercomputer. So our packet is handled by a supercomputer and not a layer 7 or a layer 3 device. All right? And based on that, it also does routing based on your geo-context. So if you are from Australia and trying to hit Chicago, sorry, I'm from Chicago. I know this is Dallas, so that comes naturally now. It will know that you got routed through some sort of DNS from Australia, you hit Europe as a point of presence, and then you hit Chicago, right? So it understands that complexity now, which can add to zero trust parameter defense. Billing, oh man, this is where it really gets it. So usually if you just sign up for a Google Cloud platform, you get $300 for free, and then you're able to do your personal usage. But we have billing specialists, and if you go through a reseller such as Dido, you get the same price if you go directly to Google. All right. So why should you pick a partner? Right? One can say like, well, why do I need a partner? Value proposition, expertise, and you're getting the same price if you were going to your main channel. Right? And this is really what we try to accomplish. Any questions on the cloud foundations before I move on?
Yeah, context. It's just to me, it's just simply kind of set of rules.
Right.
You either redefine or you find new.
Yep.
Based on that.
Right. It's an ACL defined tool. So are you talking about context? But based
Yeah,
on
context.
based on variable elements, right? So like it's just like machine learning. How do I predict what the weather is going to be tomorrow if I give it a set of data? It has to look at its previous value, look at present value, and then try to do an inference.
You add some intelligence.
Exactly. All right. I love using the word monolithic because like when I think about it, I think about those insurance commercials where they have the caveman, right? So we went from like this and guys, the reason I use monolithic because I spend time on that. Like my Friday nights were that. All right. So you guys have to feel my pain. All right.
We have 2 of those.
Sure. If anything ever breaks, please don't call now. But feel my pain because I've been through that. I went through my CCNA and CCNP and this, but I love the journey of it, and that's why I'm like, really happy that I'm in the cloud environment. But you have these data centers, right? Nothing wrong with it if you are a small mom and pop shop. But what are you on a transformation for digital path, right? So the problem with the difference between an Amazon and let's say this is going to be interesting because I love doing entrepreneurship business use cases. Right. The difference between Amazon and some mom and like Shopify is the fact that obviously Amazon works on scale, but Amazon was able to have a business technology leverage before Spotify or Shopify, right? I think about it. If Amazon did not do its cloud, where would Amazon be today, right? The difference between Napster and SoundCloud is timing, and I'll tell you why. The reason Napster was not successful was because at that time, Digital Record Media did not want storage tapes to be uploaded on there, right? They did not want CDs to be replaced because music industry harped on it. If you're a Jay-Z fan, you would have to sign to a Jay-Z agency. Yeah, he's from Bronx. And that's how you would do it. But then SoundCloud came and destroyed the game. So sometimes technology is about timing, and sometimes technology is about opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. I was talking with my niece yesterday about this thing. It was said Spotify is more revolutionary. I said no, it just borrowed concept.
Right, and I
It's good
agree
timing.
with that.
It's about timing.
So I'll give you a podcast that everyone should listen. It's on SoundCloud. It's called A16Z. All right, fascinating business use case scenarios about industries in the healthcare, in the commerce, in the song, and the music industry. All right. So coming back to this picture, you have a big data center. There's administrative overhead. If your server goes down and you don't have a contingency plan, you have. Let's say a server goes down, right? You have to buy one from Amazon or eBay, right? A Dell R200 server. Then you have to put some sort of a OS image on it. You have to do your DNS configurations. You have to do your networking configurations. Then you probably make sure that it's aligned with your golden image. And then you have to rack it, heat, and put it all this. You're losing time and money on doing things that are not trivial. This does not involve in your business, right? This does not make you close your deals. This is an opportunity, time wasted. And this is why you should move to the cloud regardless. Because the amount of time you're using this, intelligence and effort behind this, you can become a business expert on something else. All right? Okay. So in most today's data center, right, you have a firewall / load balancer / proxy something. Then you have a layer 3 switch or a router. Then you have a layer 2 switch. Then you have a storage and a server, right? So it's a top-down approach. It's a layered approach. You're not doing anything horizontally, right? It's vertical. So if a user wants to come and do something, it has your firewall, load balancer, proxy, and goes through the layers and tiers of infrastructure. What microservices is defines the game. You're not playing top-down, you're playing east-west, right? And the explosion of applications has enabled you to cater to that. If you want to hit some sort of a program, or if you want to hit some sort of a application, you go through a web application firewall, and it's a horizontal access, right? Small packaged containers or libraries that do the job in a very efficient and particular manner that can scale up and scale down. All right? And really, one can argue that the explosion of containerization became because of the consumption of data, right? We wanted data everywhere. It wasn't just our laptops. It's in every device we virtually have. I mean, you have smart fridges now that check if you have some amount of groceries to make lasagna for you, right? Like we have that intelligence. But for that intelligence, we need data, and for what we need data for, we need security and availability for that data. Okay? Is anyone running microservices applications today in their environment? Like containerizations, Kubernetes, Dockers, anything of that matter? Can you elaborate a bit on that?
Nothing on Docker, so I'm in high performance computing, so we use open source containerization called Singularity.
Okay.
And we're moving into Ruby Dockers.
Okay, so is it a challenge to create clusters and nodes and pods, deploy them on-prem? Is it strictly on-prem or is it on cloud as well?
It's strictly on.
Okay.
What's your industry? What's your industry?
University of Texas in Dallas.
Oh, okay. All right. So let's say you want to make a student center application where, like, has anyone heard of Blackboard.com?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Blackboard.com is a strictly software as a service type of solution, right? Like most organizations, including the one that I teach, they deploy that in Salesforce or like some sort of AWS cloud, right? So the problem with applications today is natively built in on-prem, you're fine, but you gotta think about the future. Let's say your company gets bought over, right? Or you do a merger and acquisition. From a financial standpoint, you might be matching up, but from a technical standpoint, you guys might be missing out. And that's because people did not start thinking about containerizing applications until very recently. Because now you're able to transport and port code. And that's the biggest difference between on-prem, like research and development / DevOps basically, and on the cloud.
I'm probably not so
Oh, that's cool. All right. So I really like this picture because people don't understand that there's a connection between an API call and a microservice call, right? So by default, Google Cloud Platform is something very spectacular that may frustrate someone but doesn't understand the brains behind it. Which is by default, they do not enable every API. So for example, if you want to enable a API or a Cloud Vision ML API, just throwing it out there, you got to go in and enable the API. That's because there's mapping between APIs and microservices. And what it does is it detangles that architecture. So you have one-to-one mapping, which makes your API calls also very secure. So if you don't want to turn on an API, right, you don't do it. Because remember, API is how two programs talk to each other and pass data. So why open a platform for traversing that data when you don't need it? Okay? Is it a functionality issue? Sure, but it's one click of a button, or you can go on your G Cloud and turn it on. All right. Another problem now that we have in IT is, first it was infrastructure. Now it's, hey, I am running SQL Server. How do I migrate and lift and shift to the cloud? What is my Postgres, or I'm running Postgres SQL. It has a database that's fed to an application that talks to this application, right? So there's a tangling effect, there's a domino effect, all right? So now what Kubernetes allows you to do is you run one sort of a bin library, and then you have a database attached to it. And people like gaming companies, they do this way. So it's one-to-one mapping. So this is what you can do in a visual abstraction element. You spin up a Kubernetes pod, right? And you only allow that database to talk to that application. The reason you do that is because if your database goes down, you're able to segment that and dissect and troubleshoot it, right? If you allow too many dependencies on one pod, then it becomes problematic because remember, you have to auto heal it. So it's immutable. Once it goes down, it has to be restarted or healed, right? Okay. So that's the challenge that a lot of organizations have. Is anyone using infrastructure as a code today? Terraform or HashiCorp or anything? Is anyone's vision to marry dev, SAG, and infrastructure in one home? I guess is that a strategic vision that you guys are aiming for at this point? What is the strategic vision that you guys want to enable in today's organization?
We're doing more DevOps stuff now.
Okay. But like, what is the business driver that expedites that? Like, why would you, like, you have a strategic vision, right? And that has to align with what your business core objective is, right? So I guess I'm trying to understand what is your strategic vision and how does that align with your business competencies?
Reducing costs and headcount and stuff, so that the developers are the ones that are also running the day-to-day.
Okay.
So,
Anyone else? What is AT&T's vision? I feel like, they do mergers and acquisitions left and right, right?
Right.
I just actually joined AT&T. I just know that we're going to have plenty of work to do with the cloud and ingestion to the cloud.
Right.
All plenty of data, in which involve machine learning and AI. So I just want to understand better the different components once we move a client to that process.
Right. So AT&T software-defined network is their core competency. They're also doing a lot of things in IoT. When I was there for the 4 years, the Time Warner cable deal, did they go through, or no? Did the FDIC break it? Anyone know?
Time Warner still, I think maybe Charter, Time Warner.
Okay, but
I thought they were merged.
yeah, I thought they merged too. And right, the business objective was AT&T was trying to get the streaming service, but Netflix and Disney now beat them to it. So anytime you see a technological paradigm shift, keep in mind, guys, there's moolah behind it that drives it. All right. So the reason everyone loves Kubernetes is because you're able to modernize and containerize application. And if you can summarize it in one sentence, it's basically this. Today, if you have an on-prem application, you cannot port that over. If you have an on-prem application today, right? And if you're not using containerization, it's stuck on your server. You're not able to like port the libraries, port the code, port the DLL files. You can copy and paste it, but that's not what you want to do. You want to have a continuous integration and continuous development pipeline. And this is where Kubernetes comes into play. Now, I'll tell you why Google's Kubernetes is better than Amazon's securities. Because it's natively built in by Google. You have to realize Google has the sharpest individuals in the world, right? I mean, really, it's everyone's dream job to work at Google. Let's be honest, for the most part, right? And so they hire the smartest people. And so you want a company that's backed by intelligent professional individuals. A. And B, they have natively built-in containerization and Kubernetes applications before we even do it. Keep in mind.
I work with Oracle projects.
Yes.
And I agree with you because Thomas Korean left Oracle and joined.
So I'm a big fan of Thomas Korean because he's from Kerala, India, and George Korean was his brother or cousin?
Yeah,
his brother was a CEO of NASA.
Yeah.
Right. So whenever the Google Cloud Summit, I love them because they're big Indian fans. I would also love Suchar Pindia because he did an interview with Sachin Tendulkar and Shah Rukh Khan, and Virat Kohli, three of my idols. So yeah, obviously there's just so much context and history behind it, right? But you gotta give them credit for that. And so the reason I harp on Kubernetes running natively on Google is because you want to run everything natively. Okay? You're getting an ecosystem, guys, from hardware to software to security to productivity. No other organization does that. Right? And you have auto-node, repair, healing, load balancers, and all these fancy bells and whistles that I can get granular into, but I want to keep it at a very high level, right? So the objective is, how do I take my application, run it continuously on an integration and development pipeline, able to port code, and able to maintain versions of it, right? If something doesn't go bad, I'm able to roll back. And that's really what Kubernetes is allowing me to do at a high level. Any questions on Kubernetes? What is the language that you guys are using for DevOps today? Is it Python? Anyone still doing C++? I saw someone browse there. So believe it or not, in our master's program, they still make our students take C++. I took C++, C#, and C. I ended up using Python for everything. So just
Mostly Python.
mostly Python. Yeah.
In utilities, yeah, I know Python is very popular.
Well, it's the back end of a
Yeah.
lot of things.
So Python 3 just came out, but there's also something called Cortana, Cortana, I'm probably butchering the name. That's going to be the new generation of what Google's using, but Python's going to be the standard for the most part. Cool thing is, if you ever deploy an application on Google Cloud Platform or an app server, which means you don't need an infrastructure for it, you can pick a different language. You don't have to be stuck with Python. And that's another amazing thing about containerization. You can run a different on different languages and different platforms without needing to import the libraries. All right, so this is a great example of, hey, this all sounds fancy and cool, but what about my security, bro? Right? Like, I have to really think about my security. So this visual is basically a blue team and a green team, right? And they have access to pods, and this is how they will have separation of duties. So you can configure security rules that will allow only access to pods by blue team and by green team, right? And this is just an overlay. So another problem that containers have is, like AWS would tell you that you can't port your security access control list to your containers. So let me repeat that because this might sound a little bit puzzling. Usually, when you create a virtual private cloud on Amazon, you have something called security access scripts, right? Just like in Cisco, you have ACLs, ACLs, or whatever you want to call them. You also have them in AWS or cloud computing model. But that's on your infrastructure side, not on your app containers page, right? So how do you monitor and understand what's going on in your containers? So if you have 5 containers, not a big deal. But people are not going to deploy 5 containers. And at enterprise level, people are going to deploy 100 to 200 containers all the time. How do I make sure that my security is met? How do I make sure that I monitor and log everything? How do I make sure that people are not overusing the resource of my buildings? That is all achieved by something called an SDO. An SDO is a is a Google proprietary product that helps with Kubernetes, right? And is able to achieve all that, right?
But that works against their business model to make profit for users transaction.
It only works against their business model if they have high level of administrative granularity. Right? So in a grand scheme of things, you want to be able to deploy, let's say, 300 containers. But are you willing to take a risk if someone deploys a malicious code and there's code dependency? Remember, if a network wants to talk to another network, what do you need? You need network address translation. But container applications can talk to each other, right? So now you have a security risk. Moving from east to west, traversing from the east to west plane is tougher to control than up and down, right? Up and down you have layers. So in a traditional model, how does your firewall know what to do when it sees a packet? What does it do first? If a firewall hits the packet, what does the firewall do?
It breaks into pieces.
It's a little bit better, higher level than that. Basically, it has an access control list and looks at the table, right? Port, protocol, and IP address. It says, is it on my table? Yes. If it's not on my table, bye bye. It drops it, right? Containers are not on it. Containers don't have an IP access control list, ports, protocols, and IPs. They're just doing horizontal, east to west type of communication. So in order to have granularity on that, you need a native built-in tools or something called a side proxy. And that's what really Istio works with. It has a small library that looks at these rules, whether it's a YAML or .json file, understand what's going on, and then give you that type of report. It can work against your business model, and this is a compromise to every organization. Confidentiality, integrity, availability. How do I compromise between the three? You don't. So people that have debates, right? Who heard of the Capital One breach? Does anyone because I read 50 reports on it. Does anyone exactly know what happened with that? Okay, you're shaking your head, why? Because I heard 50 different versions of it. All right, can anyone tell me at a higher level what happened with the Capital One breach?
I know it was an ex-employee of, was it Amazon or something?
Yep.
That somehow got the private encryption keys of Capital One's cloud servers and was able to browse and do things inside their environment.
Yeah, so let me tell you what happened. Usually on a role-based access environment, right, you have a firewall engineer, right, so it's John Doe at capitalone.com. They're placed under a security engineering group. And then when the employee leaves or switches position, right, you go under role-based access and you take their name out, right? Reduces the complexity. What Capital One did is they were smart. They had something called a service account. So in the cloud, even GCP has this practice, but GCP is a little bit smarter, I'll tell you what. You create a robotic, and the whole premise of having a service account is that you don't have to call John Doe at 2 a.m. in the morning when your server breaks up. You take that service account, and there's a JSON key that you have to hold very dear to your life, right? You don't share it with people, or you put it in a key management system, and you only give access to that JSON key in an encrypted version to a person that wants to access that 2 a.m. So it's not that they didn't take out her name from a role-based access. They never shut down the service account that she had access to. They never changed the keys for it, right?
So the person used the services account to manually log on to the view.
Yep. So that's one thing. And then this person was also smart. What they did is they took all this data, they decrypted the data, and then they cloned it to S3 buckets multi-regionally. So not only in the United States, but also in Europe and some other place. And then they encrypted the data, right? This person would have never been caught. Does anyone know how this person got caught?
She was bragging about it on like Reddit or something.
There you go. She bragged about it on Reddit. Some dude who didn't even work at Capital One read the form on Reddit and reported to Capital.
Just on herself, huh?
Yeah, one of my passions in life was understanding human behavior, PhD in clinical psychology and computational neuroscience. Hackers brag about this stuff because they get high on it. It's just like serial killers. They don't kill because it's like ethical. They kill because they get high. There's like a high attachment. It's a serious problem, but it's one of the things that you should be cognizant of. So please do your background checks on your employees. They're like bragging about themselves on Reddit or Facebook or social media.
It relates to the guy who recently, yesterday, somebody brought a cat into that flight, like he had a huge cat.
Yeah.
And then he switched it, like he got a small cat, and then when in his boarding, he brought his own cat, like big one.
Yeah, there was like a limit of like the weight limit of
Weight limit,
cats.
yeah.
And
And
so
then
he
you
had to
had
get
a
body
report.
double.
Yeah. Was it an airport?
Yeah,
That makes
and then he bragged about it on the Facebook.
This wasn't in Texas, was it?
No.
What state was this at? I'm curious.
I don't know, it was like, he bragged about it on Facebook and they took away his mileage also.
Okay, so that's hilarious. Like, I don't know if you have laws. Like, you're purposely trying to infiltrate my security system. Okay, so the challenge now today is hybrid cloud versus on-prem. All right, so you can have on-prem KA cluster, which is kind of hard to, which you can achieve, but it has a little bit of complexity because you have to create a cluster, pods, nodes, do network configurations. In public cloud, it's a lot easier. It's 5 click of buttons, and seriously, there's 5 click of buttons I can show it to you right now. I'm going to move the console. I'll hold that, and you're able to deploy containers seamlessly. Like, it's a very quick process. Compared to on-prem, where you have to do kubectl or kubectl, get pods, get nodes, understand how many clusters you have. All right. So in a big visual, it's basically small containers. Think of them like Tupperware, like the food Tupperware, and you're able to put food in it and give it to someone else, right? Think of applications and containers in that. That's why they call it the term containers. You put the code in it and you ship it out. All right. So this is a industry lead breaker called Anthos, And I actually had a fortunate capability of seeing this on live. So I want to say 4 months ago in Chicago, we had a summit, and this dude bought this Anthos server. So it's an actual server, and it's a Greek name. All the Google products, by the way, are named after Greek methodology for the most part. And what they did is basically, they had this cool application where they had the Anthos server setting, and then they were switched between on-prem and cloud. And they literally did that on the live demo. So it was so cool to see how they did that. Yellow side was on-prem, green was on cloud. So they switched the Anthos button on and off, and you would see that the failover was so seamless. It literally took less than 5 milliseconds. So now look at this as your business continuity and DR type of an advantage, right? If you deploy Anthos with Google Cloud Platform and you're deploying a native solution as a container on Google Cloud, your BCDRP is done at 10-15 minutes. That's it, right? You're able to switch on and off. Now you can argue and say, well, Faizan, what about my infrastructure? You can spin up infrastructure, guys. Infrastructure, spinning up infrastructure on cloud is seamless. What about my security? IAM credentials. So for every challenge that on-prem people face on the BCDRP type of planning, there is a solution in the cloud. And it is a really seamless approach. Like you can do your identity access management policies, create service accounts, create failovers, do a multi-regional backups. Like these are things you can't do on an on-prem type of environment. It's extremely hard to have a multi-region high availability in America and Europe without running cloud.
So how does that work? Is it like a virtual twin or something that like is shadowing everything all the time?
Basically.
And then when one drops, it just fails?
Yeah. One thing I'll be really transparent about is not a agent, like you have to actually procure the hardware device, right? So it costs around 10K, but remember you're doing your business continuity in 10,000 dollars. That's a value proposition. Plus everything you're doing. Yeah. So it basically there's a switch, and you do one command and it will shut on and off. Okay.
So this is Google supplied hardware.
Correct. So this is what a lot of clients kind of question, right? They're like, well, why don't I just go to eBay and get a server that has 1 TB and 96 week cores? You can, but you're not getting the natively built-in solution, software as a service, as a control. So you're getting the hardware, you're getting the software, and then remember, K8 containerization is seamless on Google Cloud. You're not going to hire a DevOps, and like you might only hire one DevOps engineer to do it. You don't have to have a team of 10 DevOps engineers trying to bring up your cluster.
Yeah, I think, sorry, that's where many has a problem to move to the cloud. A lot of individuals I know, I don't have their expertise, they would say that cost-wise, it should be better to stay on premise because moving to the cloud ultimately will cost you more. So there is here, the reasons why you might want to move to cloud because other soft values that content are not really hard.
Yeah. And I think that's a fair assessment, but I always challenge with this. Your server does not have a kid that it needs to go to when it has a birthday appointment or it doesn't get sick, right? So I'll take that challenge, right? Okay. Moving to cloud is expensive. Sure. Sometimes if you're running SQL server and you have 1.5 TB of data, yeah, it's gonna cost you money, right? Are you paying an engineer $36,000 right now?
Yeah, I get the point. And of course, a hybrid, that's advice so that you should have a hybrid solution where you put on edge or premise what you can do. And then, because I think that a hidden cost is the transaction frequency. So if you have an application that has, let's say, location pinging all the time.
Sure.
So the because when you have computing, how much data, then it's like fixed cost, you can see it. But the moving target is actually transaction could be breathing more or less depending on maybe your clients. So you don't have really control of the cost.
So you're talking about ingest or ingest costs, right? So for you, okay. So for cloud providers, if you take the data in, there's no cost.
Yeah, that's right.
When you try to extract it out, that's when you have a cost associated. That's a very fair assessment. And that's why cloud companies like AWS and Google has 3 types of versioning in architecture, right? You can have storage for cold, hot, and deep. And it depends on your compliance, depends on your industry. And also the thing is that eventually, most organizations, right, will move to a footprint where they're either all cloud or 80% cloud. So it doesn't matter if their data resides in the cloud, because that ingestion cost then doesn't become worrisome. And I'll tell you one factor why. I think the defining factor of why people will always be in cloud is because of predictive analytics and machine learning, right? Everyone wants insights. The difference between you and your competitor is insight. It's information, it's data to make that rapid business decision. So if you look at the history between MapReduce and Apache Spark, MapReduce was primarily created by Google for resiliency, right? But then Apache Spark came, hardware became cheap, and then we were able to do ML and data analytics at a very high level, right? So I totally get the cost perspective. I have a premonition, and it's been proven through quantitative conclusive research, that most organizations will move to cloud regardless because of the fact they want something out of their data, right? Their data is just sitting there and being leveraged. So as you can see, there's STO here on GKE, and that's what the security and monitoring and logging does. So that's the main component that's kind of like your SIEM solution for containers, right? Does your firewall, does your monitoring and logging, SIEM. You have a centralized UI, right? And then Anthos sits in the middle. So as I said, on-prem, cloud, and then cloud footprint. Really? So now the challenge is this. I'm on-prem. I have cloud one provider, and I have cloud provider number two. How do I have central management interface portal where I'm deploying applications on all those locations? That's the challenge that Google is kind of solving. It's already being solved by Anthos right now because you're able to do it from on-prem to GCP. Now the question is, how do you prove that to on-prem, GCP, and AWS or Azure, or Alibaba, whatever cloud service provider it is?
So a more general question I
Sure.
think is, do you see it like that people like that it's OpEx and not CapEx, and it's kind of like leasing your office space, and most people lease an office space because it's just a little bit of money each month.
If I was to start a business today, I don't want any OpEx.
Yeah.
Right? What's the biggest expense for organizations today?
Or you don't want any CapEx?
I don't want any OpEx.
Oh, yeah.
What, I have just a general question. What is the biggest expense for an organization today?
G&A?
Yeah. And then I would say labor, right? Labor is
Yeah, yeah.
right.
Or-
G&A. Okay.
yeah.
Sorry, that was
Yeah.
I did accounting, but I'm not. My major was actually accounting. So CapEx, capital expenditure, operational. Really, with cloud, you're killing OpEx, right? You're not hiring a Linux engineer because everything is known in the Linux.
Well, yeah, but also every server that you buy is CapEx.
Right.
And then instead, you just have a subscription to,
Right.
instead.
And I think another people they don't get is like, okay, what is the risk? So I worked in Oracle in the Chicago office. Actually, I worked in it was a merchant acquisition of a construction payment company. So I worked in Oracle, and our cooling for our data center broke down 4 times. That was $10K each time, just for the cooler. I'm not talking about a HVAC technician coming in and fixing that, right? You don't want that headache, guys. You just don't. Like, it's so natural in cloud. If something doesn't work, you pick it up, you mute it, and you spin it back up. It's within minutes, you don't have the headache. And now, I think what has happened is that companies are challenging the knowledge expertise, right? So before you were in cyber, right? When I started my career, I was just a networking guy. Give me your Cisco stuff, I'll figure it out for you. You won't tell me what to do with your Dell server. I don't know anything about your SAN. I don't know anything about your NetApp, and I definitely don't know anything about your VMware, right? You don't have that challenge on the cloud today because the prerequisite is, oh, you call yourself an infrastructure engineer? You better know network. You better know compute. You better know the difference between SSD, persistent network, right? And the reason is because now there are free education webinars. You can go on YouTube and take a GCP training for students and get all that. You can go on cloud and get AWS training, right? So now you're not siloed in, and that has helped organizations to say that, okay, we are reducing OpEx in other ways. You go on time.
What was that? What was your cutoff, 6?
Yeah. I can't see it. No, it's 5. Okay. All right. So I can go on why move to GCP, but I'm not gonna really go on that. It's basically an end-to-end. So I said hardware, software as a solution, productivity, maps, and who knows, maybe they'll start making cars too, right? If you're into that stuff. Anyone has a Google Map? Like has done Google customized Google Maps? It's a big business. Like only Google's in it. AWS is in it.
At that point, it's going to be very expensive.
Yep.
we get proper license for
Yep.
a large amount of.
But as the push for autonomous car comes, then Maps becomes everything. Right? So actually, Maps also has revolved something. Today, if you go to a website, you're just pulling on Maps API token, right? Like if you want to say contact us, it gives you a little, like on Craigslist, right? That's not Craigslist engineer developing it. They're just pulling in a Google API, embedding on their script code on HTML and doing that. So I think I have to give credit to Google Maps because a lot of it's just APIs. You take and copy and paste some code, you put it on their website, it kind of automatically works. You don't have to customize the code. Okay, 3 things I want to harp on GCP, why it's better than any other cloud service provider. Number 1 is, it's the only provider, and I'm also talking about an internet service provider. It's the only provider that has 6 underground pipes from the Pacific Ocean to Asia. Even AT&T doesn't have that, right? So Google has their own network. They just don't tell you about it, right?
We did that.
Huh?
I worked for MCI for 10 years after MCI and AT&T.
Right,
That's infrastructure.
right, but they don't have, I'm talking about underground water.
We started with about 5-6 years ago.
Yeah. So,
And they have Atlantic underway too, the data center termination point is in Manassas, Virginia.
wow.
So, yeah, Google private network, transoceanic undersea is free.
Yeah, it's freaky, and they also do their own routing and switching. They don't use traditional like firewall rules like we study in networking or Cisco. As I said, it's handled by supercomputer. The supercomputer knows what domain you're coming from, what's the IP, and all that complexity. The second thing is security, and this is a cool video. You can actually see this on YouTube. Let's say you go to a Google data center, right? And you take an SSD and you pull it out, right? That data is gone. It automatically replicates, and you can't use this data anymore. Right? So like, these are not like fantasy stories I'm making, these are stories that they tell us in commercial service organization. So the networking, scalability, but the biggest value, the biggest value proposition, guys, is machine learning, right? Google has TensorFlow, Keras, and Colab, right? AWS just is catching up with SageMaker, right? So what now has happened is healthcare industries, right? So this might be
Sorry, let me interrupt. You're comparing Google with AWS.
right.
Where is Azure in the picture?
Sure. So I think that's a good question. I think Azure is good if you have an Active Directory federation system and you're a Microsoft suite. But ADFS or Azure in the grand scheme of business intelligence is good in just business intelligence. It doesn't have the networking infrastructure and it doesn't really compete with machine learning when it comes to it. If you want to...
Machine learning in specific, yes.
Right.
How about like Kubernetes or spinning these things?
So this is a great question, right? If you're a Windows native, Kubernetes is not Windows native, right? So it's all Linux. The reason Google harps on that is because they natively built everything on Kubernetes before they even launched Kubernetes as an option on their computer language. Amazon had to create and customize a product just for that demand. Microsoft, Windows doesn't really work on anything, right? You really need to use a Linux OS. So for Windows to do that, they just came up with something called Arc, and Arc is able to rectify most of that, but it's not natively built in. If you want to be an Azure client, you really have to be a very strict ADFS shop. It makes sense for you to do an Azure integration. If you're strictly Active Directory Federation systems and everything in your system and enterprise and organization is tied to your Active Directory, then it might make sense for you to move to Azure. But there is no value of proposition or no return of investment if you want to natively build software application as a service and run it on the cloud. And only Google can do that because it is natively built in Kubernetes, right? You have to realize that interconnection and talking with systems is still a tough part of cloud, right? If you don't believe me, listen to the owners of HashiCorp. So the creators of HashiCorp had the biggest problem, which is they were creating their own repositories on Git for AWS and GCP. And so clients challenged them. They said, why don't we just go to AWS and get that I got a free rep, good people, why do we have to go to you guys? It's because to develop a software application as a solution natively is extremely hard. You might have a great in-house PAM data ML type of behavior, it just doesn't work well in the cloud. So natively, you have to think about building everything in the cloud. Right? And now technologies are catching up to a perspective where it's just not one cloud, it's 2 different clouds different web applications talking to each other with the complexities of the network and making sure that you have an inter-mesh hybrid infrastructure. That's really your strategic objective, right? How do I have a digital footprint that allows me to scale, that allows me to be multi-cloud, right? And that allows me to have a sustainable usage model where I'm not killing myself at cost. Really, that should be the strategic vision. Okay. Alright. So, I'm going to kind of rush through this because I talked about this. So we have something called a cloud PSO. So what we do is a 8-week foundation, what's called Cloud Foundation. It's an 8-week engagement, and we assess all these. So these are good conversations. We never say like, oh, let's tabletop for that, because we know exactly what type of challenges you guys will come with. It's not like, hey, you want to do a simple lift and shift? Oh, you have a networking equipment here. Let me create a firewall and ACL list for you. Spin up a little tiny VPC and call it a day. No, that's partnerships are more than that. Partnerships are really understanding, how do I make my client's life easier, more technical, and more scalable for the future? That's how every organization should think, right? So what we do is we understand your codependency between your infrastructure, your applications, your database. We understand the security overhead that you have. We understand the compliance and the industry that you're in. For example, I just worked with an industry that's using Windows 7 Server to aggregate data from their wind turbines. There's use cases for that, right? And so it's a very different ballgame. So we have this cloud foundation where we assess, plan, migrate, and optimize your infrastructure. Okay. So we do have tools. So there's third-party tools where if you have VMware, SAP, NetApp, right? We can use these tools. It will give you a pricing calculator, because I know a lot of you guys are really enabling or are very strict about cost, and rightfully so. And you're able to use this tool to do first movers, second movers, critical things, so your migration is a lot more seamless, right? And these are integrated easily with Google, so Google partners with them. Any questions about those? Like if you guys, what do you guys use for BCDRP planning? I guess that's a question I should ask.
For what kind of planning?
Business continuity, disaster recovery plan.
Oh, yeah.
So let's say like your data center goes down. What is? Do you have a backup
Yeah,
plan?
I just have a mirrored data, a whole physical data center,
Okay.
mirrored offsite. Yeah.
Okay. And that's been working fine.
Yeah. It's,
Never tested it.
I mean, I know you're supposed to test it every year.
Every year we do. We have the model, we make that, and we do that. But real life never tested.
So most organizations that come to us, they don't have a backup plan. So the fact that you guys do, I'm actually kudos to you, because that's really important, right?
Yeah, but I guess again, to your comment before, the power and the value position is machine learning.
Yeah.
AI.
If you're in the e-commerce, like, how do you think insurance companies get with their premiums? How do you think they compete for the premiums? Like, insurance companies is all about ML and AI. I'll give you another stat. I'm a big sports freak, so making super teams, right? Like, you see these debates, who's better, Kobe Bryant or Jordan, or LeBron James or Jordan? I can send you Google machine learning models where they'll do the statistical inference and give you a dream team based on numbers.
What about the catch radius stuff where they have the analytics of where the guy, you have like 30% chance of catching the ball, and that's all
right. That's also there. On LinkedIn, I just saw a guy that did an analysis of whether it's okay of Quentin Cook and Stephen Curry to play together as a team. Which I'm like, that's a no-brainer. They're both really good players. You should put them on the court. But he justified it through machine learning. I lost him half the time because he did clusterization, which I didn't get. I thought he should have used regression, but that's
if there were two balls on the court, then yes.
Seriously, that's a different game.
I think if you're a sports enthusiast, ML is like the best thing that happened to you, because now you can back it up with data. You're like, it's not even my opinion anymore. They're crazy PhD. And this was a PhD guy from like University of Massachusetts that did this, so I was even more impressed.
So you said you have tools for like pricing with NetApp. What about Pure Storage or other?
Yep. So Cloudomize, Stratozone, Cloud Indoor, all our tools. So you just they're fixed parameters. How many virtual machines you have with that? And so just from a jargon standpoint, some companies say nodes. Nodes just equals to one like via, right? So one node per maps to one via. You put all that numbers, fills all the calculator. Now, the problem with pricing calculators is that they don't give you business continuity disaster recovery, right? So if your server goes down, they're not incorporating the fact you have to buy a server, heating and racking, cooling, all that stuff. That's one problem with it. The second problem is they're not saying, hey, how much data is in your server? Your data is the new oil, right? If you can't quantify that, then you can't put a binary number to it and say, okay, that's how much the price is. So don't look at the price, look at the value, right? Like, you can get a Toyota Corolla for $18,000, but if you give someone a different choice, we can have BMW 528xi and Toyota Corolla. I don't know what you guys would think, but most of this is why luxury cars still have good sales because of that.
It's interesting you said data is the new oil. You meant data as in physical data.
No, I meant the abstraction value of data as the right, in the physical data.
Right. While Narendra Modi was in
Yeah.
Houston, and he referred to data as in the data as in LTE data. Is the new oil.
Yeah, I think that's true. I was there. I actually looked at that rally because it was a big thing in the Indian community. So it was pretty fun. But yeah, I would agree with that. That data has become the new currency. I think one of those, right?
As in data in rest, as in data in, as in the mobile data.
Yeah, not the LT data is wrong per se, but I'm talking about like raw code information about people's behavior. Like, anyone know that Snapchat filter that changed your face to an older person? Yeah. Okay. So that was one. There was one theory about that. But really, what they did is they scanned your face, and they kind of sent it to organizations that now look at like, okay, I'm 30 years old, right? Maybe in 10 years I'll get some disease. How do they predict that? Through my facial recognition, right? If I have messed up iris or coronas, they have my face picture. They can go and argue with me, hey, you're going to develop a business because the probability for machine learning inference is this. We're not going to pay premiums. What am I going to do?
Yeah, that's Google is doing collecting the.
I don't think it's Google. I think it's everything. Google.
It's Google.
Hey, wait a minute.
Google is working on insurance,
Yeah, I think that's where ethics. So there's awesome debates. I went to a cybersecurity summit on New York called AI4, and there were a lot of Department of Defense people, right? So there's a lot of debates about ethical data understanding or ethical data cleansing. Like, what is good data, right? And are you allowed to capture all this data? So there's a lot of philosophical concept on it, which is an interesting conversation. Probably a conversation we should table talk for later. But it's definitely an issue. And same thing with in defense. Like, when you scan all these things, you can hold those pictures, right? Now you have radiology images that you can upload and derive some sort of information and analytics on. All right, so the way we do migration is application, security, and infrastructure. All right, obviously you want to reduce downtime, we do a quick and easy migration. And I think with Dido, the value we provide is we give you a roadmap, we give you an 8-week engagement, and we have a project weekly thing. Like, one of the goals that I have is I want to make sure that the customer is not having these thoughts at 12, when they're going to sleep at night, like, oh, like, what happened at work today that, it might be a risk later. Like, I want to take that fear out. I want to provide that comfort that we're doing our best jobs and providing that. And that just really comes with taking your job seriously, but more than so, having passion for it, right? Having an empowered, dynamic environment where it's not a client-server relationship. It's how do we make your life better with whatever you have here. All right. So this is kind of a graphical depiction of what we do. We have a discovery where we identify first movers. Obviously, we look at your infrastructure. We look at use cases, and we build something called foundations, which is security, networking, compute, media, basic components. Applications. Okay, so if you're not running applications, you can skip that stage. But most of our clients today, they want everything. They want applications, databases, networking, and then they're like, hey, what can you do for an ML? So a cool project we work in Dido is we actually created a customized chatbot, right? So predictive analytics. If you have a mom and pop company and you don't want a person that is behind the keyboard that's answering you, you can create a predictive analytics with dialogue flow, and we can help you configure that, and it'll make your job easier, right? So instead of finding the tracking number by yourself, the machine is tied to a database that will do it for you. All right, then we conduct the migration, we make sure that everything is clean cut over, we test, we do alpha testing, we do beta testing. Then we just redefine those terms, pick a substrate of the database, migrate it. If everything goes well, then we can do it again for different iterations. All right, and really, again, it's monolithic to microservices. How do we take your old vision and keep it into a new product, new environment, where you're able to do multi-platform and multi-cloud?
So I've heard of Kubernetes and containerization, but I assumed it was containerization of entire VMs, but it's of applications.
Right, so
So
VMs
it's
are
like,
different than.
we still use Citrix XenApp for our application.
Sure. And the
So
latency
it's
is
similar like that.
How do you deal with the latency in Zen?
It's for low priority apps, mainly, or way remote sites that are going to be slow no matter what they are.
Right. And so now customers are saying, I don't even want 0.1 milliseconds. Look, put a load balancer behind it, cache it. Like, you have to understand, first, actually, load balancers are an interesting thing. I'm not trying too much time on your happy hours. But load balancers have been around since 1970s. It's the consumption of applications that allowed you to have an HTTPS load balancer, an application load balancer, and a networking load balancer. So now if you go on Google Cloud, you have actually flavors of load balancers what you want to do. So you have an application load balancer that will run app 1, app 2, app 3. For an e-commerce company like FTD.com, right? Valentine's Day comes, Mother's Day comes, they're hit. Their peaks are a little away. So actually, containers are better than VMs because there's no OS image that's required, and they're faster to deploy, and they're immutable. Destroy something, you get it back up. With VM, you don't have that.
So what if you need something more beefier than contain? The application record.
Can you give me an example?
So containers are very small.
Right. But you can have a cluster of containers, and you can run that through microservices. Right. So you cluster them, right?
Some application like 4 cores, so an 8-core database.
Clustering, right? So if Amazon Prime is just not one container. Amazon Prime is 10 containers working together. If 3 of them fail, 3 of them will auto heal and recover that. So for each function, you create a container, right? So your procurement, your shipping, your order, your customer, right? And now you cluster them up, right? And so it's like an army. It's active versus active passive, right? Old traditional networking, like if you use this way, say 5520, I'm a firewall, I'm sitting here, right? I'm just passive. If that firewall's internal goes down, inside connection goes down, that is stream down. Clusters don't work like that. Everyone is ready to fight. It's not a WWE tag match. It's Royal Rumble. Everyone is up, right? So the philosophy behind it is completely different than VMs.
Right, you're talking about hot standby.
What's up?
You're talking about the concept that was 100 years ago, like a hot standby?
All of them are active.
No, a hot standby.
High availability versus standby, that's the debate.
Okay, as being Ericsson, the 20 years back.
Right.
A hot standby means that you only one instruction,
Right.
one instruction behind the active. So the standby is only one machine instruction behind the standby.
But in containerization, it's not one, it's everyone is active.
And
We talk about air.
kind of load balance between all of them. Any
Yes, so think of it as it's not a one-on-one, it's a team of 5 or a team of 10 working together in coalition. So it doesn't have to be you take 50%, I take 50%.
Yeah.
I can take 30%, you take 70%.
Oh, I see, okay, you share the load.
You share it, exactly.
And if one goes down, it just
Yeah.
adjusts.
Alright, so I know I'm running out of time, but so I'll keep it open. You guys just want to have a more engagement conversation, or do you guys want to actually move on? I mean, I'm done.
I'm good.
Any other so these are good conversations to have. Any other conversations you guys want to have involving this? I know we didn't touch machine learning. Is that something you guys want to do?
Sure.
Okay. So what are the cases of machine learning? Give me a problem statement. I'll tell you if ML is maybe the solution for it, maybe not. Not be the right solution. Right? So if you're trying to differentiate of a data set, let's say you have a data set, and it will tell you that your cholesterol will be, like 255 or something when you hit age 40. That's something you can do with machine learning, or stock prices, or the weather, right? So quantitative numbers, numerical values, right? Something that does not require machine learning is, that's actually.
As long as you can quantify it in a number.
Right. So really, machine learning comes down to two aspects: classification and regression. Okay. Regression is you give me a point, right? You give me an x point, and I'll correlate to a y. So just a bad correlation. As you grow older, you grow wiser. Right? Right? Actually, that's what it is. It's nurture nature. So that's really data science. This is where machine learning is awesome. Machine learning is having the wisdom to know that 8 out of 10 that the picture of the cat is cat, but I have the intelligence and the wisdom to know that 2 out of 10 it's not, and I can call you up. Right? So it's like a kid. Machine learning is a kid. You have to train a kid through nurture and nature, product of the environment, to teach them something. And machine learning is no different. You have to go to rigorous data training cycles, understand 70% or 70-30 pass-through fail ratio or 80-20 to figure out if the system can pick it up.
Let me ask you. Machine learning could be based on data, what happened before, like recognition.
It's overglorified data, yeah.
But what about, because I think I saw a movie somewhere where the machine can learn exactly as a child.
Right?
Start to develop its own learning mechanism.
Right.
So do we have this?
Yeah, so traditional programming.
What was that?
See, now you're getting into ethics. So actually, let me show you.
Well, there's different kinds of machine learning, like the
No,
evolution.
because a
learn,
static machine learning based on previous data, that's not it.
Yeah.
But really create your own.
Machine learning is based on data.
Yeah,
You
so-
feed it the data,
Yeah.
and it learns from the data.
Okay, but
watch
the
Your
right
data
thing.
is your experience as you're growing up, other experiences is your data.
Okay, it's in our brain. Okay, but the process and we, okay, all right.